Hey everyone, Road Breach here, and today we're looking at Transformers Prime the Game. Transformers Prime the Game was developed by Ultron and Now Productions, and published by Activision for Wii, DS, and 3DS on October 30th, 2012, and for Wii U 18 days later alongside the launch of the console, making it the first Transformers Wii U game. The show this game was based on is held up as one of the best Transformers series, and it holds up very well, with the only real issue being Optimus being a plank of wood. It's also crazy to think that this series had a nightmarish production, but ended up being something watchable. I remember getting this game at the same time as Xenoblade Chronicles X, and I played Transformers Prime first because I thought I would like it less and wanted to save Xenoblade for later. Funnily enough, the exact opposite happened. That's not me talking smack about Xenoblade, I just preferred Transformers Prime. But that was a long time ago. Do I still feel that way? Well, let's fire up the ground bridge and see what this game has to offer. Starting with the case, we can see the Autobots in front taking up most of the cover. It's obvious that they used the in-game models because of the straight edges that shouldn't be there, and the detail on Bumblebee's body is clearly just a texture for the most part. In the background, we can see some of the Decepticons flying in the air with Megatron's eyes on the top that fades into a starry sky. And the title stands out very well from the background. On the back, we can see some screenshots from the cutscenes with the selling points telling you about the campaign and multiplayer. Now, onto the game. To start off, this game's graphics leave a lot to be desired. Character models look like they'd belong on the PS2 with low poly counts, lackluster lighting, and lackluster reflections. Facial animations pretty much only have the mouths moving in the cutscenes, and the eyes on the Transformers characters don't move at all. Considering this game came out first on the Wii, I imagine they did very little when porting it over to the Wii U. I'm pretty sure if this game was originally made for the Wii U, it probably would have looked better. The Wii U may have been less powerful than its contemporaries, but that's not to say it couldn't put out games that look good. I don't care what you want to tell me, Sonic Boom looks fine and way better than this game does. That said, despite the low fidelity, the character models do look very accurate to the show they're from, and the cinematography helps make it feel familiar to the show. Familiar environments are also recreated very well. Not only that, but everyone reprises their role in this game. So even though the graphics are lacking, it's not like they didn't try to make it feel like the show it's based on. The music also makes the game feel like the show with the orchestral score, but there is one techno song that I believe is a little out of place. I don't remember the show having anything besides orchestral music when there was a fight scene. That's not to say it's bad though, it's just out of place for what the game is based on. I've also noticed some stock sound effects that I know I've heard elsewhere. So the presentation is certainly lacking, but how's the actual gameplay? Transformers Prime is a basic beat-em-up. You'll mainly fight Vehicons by launching light and heavy attacks. Some enemies will block, which is either when you launch a shield breaker or a vehicle attack to try and break the shield. However, there are some enemies you won't be able to get to, so you need to hold ZL to lock onto an enemy, and hit ZR to fire. You can also switch targets by moving the right stick in the direction of the enemy you want to shoot. I guess they figured this would have been easy to abuse, so they make guns not do as much damage as your fists. But you can tap and hold ZR to charge up a shot, which does more damage than the normal shot. Each character also handles a little differently. You'll notice that some characters will run faster than others and have different fire rates from one another. I'm gonna be honest, this game is pretty easy. Enemies are easy to get in a stun lock, and your punches do enough damage to put down most enemies pretty quickly. You have a shield, but you're not going to need it all that often until you get to the bosses. But we're not there yet, so pump the brakes. Beating up enemies fills up your Synergon bar, and when it's full, you hit L or tap the button on the touchscreen to boost damage output and movement speed. I feel like tapping the screen to activate Synergon mode is a little cumbersome and unnecessary. Why take my hand off the gamepad to touch the screen when my left hand is already on the button I need to hit when my Synergon is ready? Something tells me they wanted to use the features of the Wii U, but didn't have enough time to think of a better way to use the touchscreen. What about transforming? How does it work here? You hit the X button to transform, and you can only move like a normal land vehicle. You move forward by holding the left stick forward, and steer by moving left or right. You can also do a vehicle jump by hitting the jump button while you're moving forward, which gives you more distance when clearing jumps. And much like other Transformers games, you can fire guns in vehicle mode, and you can lock onto enemies as well, though you can't aim directly behind you. And you have a boost that you use with R in vehicle mode. There's also levels that will have you steer with the gamepad's motion controls. Much like the touchpad button for Synergon mode, this feels unnecessary. Like I mentioned earlier, you'll mainly fight Vehicon grunts, which are incredibly easy to defeat. They will try to use vehicle attacks, but they're still easy to avoid. Flyers will fire at you from a distance and move to different vantage points. Tanks will block your attacks and occasionally fire at you. Snipers will lock onto you from far away, fire at you, and transform to get to another vantage point. Insecticons are pretty much reskins of the Vehicons. I didn't really notice any difference with behavior. And tankers will charge up to deal more damage, though I wasn't really able to experience that because, like the Vehicon grunts, they're pretty easy to take out. We'll get to the boss battles in a little bit, but let's talk about the story for now. The game starts with the Decepticons on the Nemesis towing a meteor in space. Megatron wants this meteor because it's full of dark energon, which you should know by now is a bad thing because dark energon is a volatile substance that can turn pain into pleasure amongst other effects. Back at the Autobot base, Raphael finds that the dark energon readings are off the charts, so the Autobots go to check it out, and Optimus destroys the tow anchor, which causes the meteor to plummet towards Earth, but the Decepticons have backup anchors that the Autobots need to jump to the meteor to take out. Megatron then flies to the meteor to give Optimus a piece of his mind, and we have a fight with Megatron. Megatron will fire at you from afar, then block, which is when you transform and attack him with a vehicle attack, and wail on him. The fight ends prematurely when the meteor starts cracking because there's something inside, and the Autobots fall to Earth. Starscream takes this as a victory, but Megatron doesn't think that they should celebrate just yet, and orders Starscream, Knockout, and Arachnid to go down to Earth and finish off the Autobots and sweep the area where the meteor fell. Back at the base, Ratchet is trying to contact the Autobots to see if they're still functioning, but the meteor appears to be masking their signals. Raphael finds out that the meteor fell from orbit and landed in South America. Ratchet decides to go to see if anyone needs help and tells the kids to stay put. An alarm sounds off, and they find that the Autobots are still alive. Okay, I need to address this right now. The Autobots just fell from orbit, and they're somehow still functioning. As a fan of the show, I know for a fact that this is bullshit. There's no way in hell that the Autobots would survive a fall like this, because we see that in the show that the Vehicons cannot survive a fall from within Earth's atmosphere. So what makes you think the Autobots would survive a fall from outside of Earth's atmosphere? Seriously, who wrote this? Other than that, Mika wants to go help the Autobots, but Jack says they shouldn't because Ratchet told them to stay put. Jack tries to contact Ratchet, but he can't get to him. Raphael shows some concern for Bumblebee, and puts forth the possibility that they may need their help right now, and Jack ends up agreeing to go find the Autobots. We cut to RC, who's miraculously not in pieces, and she's confused about why she's in Jasper. She tries to contact the base, but she gets no response, so she decides to head back to the base on her own. But she gets intercepted by some Insecticons. She gets contacted by Jack, and he tells her that he's gonna open a ground bridge at the factory. She gets to the factory, and runs into Arachnid, and we engage in a boss fight. Arachnid will charge at you and try to hit you with a long combo, which is when you need to block her attacks until she's done. You then need to wail on her, and she'll jump away. She'll try to hit you with a vehicle attack, which is something you just need to avoid altogether because those attacks can break through your block. She'll also perch on top of the building and fire lasers and webs that can immobilize you. After the fight, as RC is about to shoot Arachnid, Jack comes in and it inadvertently distracts RC, which gives Arachnid the chance to capture Jack and fly off with him. This segues into a chase where you need to avoid or shoot obstacles, and jump over gaps until you get to an unfinished part of the road. RC shoots Arachnid, which probably would have hit Jack, and she catches Jack.
You should rename your pet human, RC. If I were you, I'd call him Strategic Weakness.
We cut over to Miko trying to get Bulkhead to respond, and Bulkhead gets up and asks what happened, and Miko tells him that he fell from space, and Bulkhead says a pretty funny line.
So that's why it feels like my dents have dents in them.
Starscream then comes along and tries to shoot Miko and Bulkhead, which makes the temple they're in start crumbling. This segues into a time driving segment where you need to shoot the rocks and stay on the road. However, you can't vehicle jump because Miko is on board, and I could imagine that transforming when a human is on board would definitely crush and mangle the human. But considering the Autobots fell from orbit and Bulkhead transformed with Miko on board in the show, this seems a little bit like a cop-out. Miko and Bulkhead make it out of the temple, but they're not out of the woods yet because more Vehicons show up and Bulkhead tells Miko to get to safety. After Bulkhead's done beating up the cons, he finds Miko got to the other side of the ruins.
Miko, how'd you get all the way over there?
Wasn't hard.
What did you do? Did you turn on creative mode and fly over here? As they're about to leave, Starscream confronts them, Bulkhead tells Miko to hide again, and we fight Starscream. Starscream will fly around and barrage you with missiles, and perch on a pillar, which is when you need to shoot him off the pillar and vehicle attack him. Rinse and repeat. Well, not entirely. Some flyers will spawn and shoot at you. After Starscream is defeated, Miko congratulates Bulkhead and says she took a bunch of pictures of the battle, but she gets kidnapped by a Viacon and Starscream flies off with her. We cut over to Bumblebee being held captive, and Raphael gets his attention and tells him that he can deactivate his restraints so they can find a way out of this mine. But an alarm goes off, and the Decepticons go on the attack. Bumblebee and Raphael get to the elevator, but they're still underground. Security is too tight for them to go any further, so Raphael tells Bumblebee to go take out these devices so he can find the security server and take it out. After Bumblebee destroys the server, Raphael needs Bee's help because the Decepticons found him and the cons are now trying to get into the elevator. So Bumblebee has to get to the elevator and beat up the cons before they get through the door. After Bumblebee deals with the cons, they get to ground level, and Bumblebee thinks it's a good idea for Raphael to stay back while Bumblebee scouts ahead for danger. Sure enough, Knockout comes in to crash the party. Bumblebee tells Raphael to get back in the elevator for safety, and we have a fight with Knockout. Knockout will run forward and hide behind his shield for you to vehicle attack him, and he'll drive to the other side of the arena to fire at you from a distance. He'll try to vehicle attack you as well, which I recommend jumping over. When you get Knockout to 25% of his health, he'll create these electrical hazards to make the fight harder. As Bumblebee is about to shoot Knockout, he gets contacted by Bulkhead, and he tells him that the Decepticons took Miko and asks if Raphael is with him. Knockout gets away, and Bumblebee goes to find that Raphael is gone. We cut to Ratchet trying to wake up Optimus. Optimus landed next to the meteor, and we see that there's a big scary bot stuck inside the meteor. He comes back online, swats away Ratchet, and we fight him. I feel it would have been a good choice to leave the health bar blank or put a question mark under it since we haven't been given this guy's name yet, but since we're given it early, I'll use it. Thunderwing will fire at you and create shockwaves that you need to jump over. He'll get his hand stuck after he creates the shockwave, which is when you wail on his arm cannon. But Ratchet tells you to
shoot him in the head.
Thanks, Leon. He also has a flame breath attack that I think you may just need to get in close to avoid. After you drain his health bar, the Decepticons come in and attack Optimus. He gets contacted by RC, and she tells him that she's going to converge on his location, but Optimus tells her to hold her position because they're about to bridge out of here. So now you got 2 minutes and 55 seconds to get to the ground bridge, but you need to avoid lasers, fight Decepticons, and jump a chasm to get to it. Optimus and Ratchet get to the ground bridge, but Ratchet gets knocked to the other side of the chasm. Optimus tries to get Ratchet, but the crossfire between the Nemesis and Thunderwing knocks Optimus through the ground bridge. Sometime later, the Decepticons are getting Thunderwing out of the meteor back on the Nemesis. When the meteor fell to Earth, pieces of the meteor broke off with pieces of Thunderwing embedded in them. They wake up Thunderwing, and he demands that the cons release him so he can destroy the Matrix of Leadership. Megatron tells Thunderwing that he's taken on too much damage and gives him an ultimatum that if he swears his loyalty to the Decepticons, he'll be repaired and have a better chance of destroying the Matrix. Thunderwing thinks the idea of Megatron repairing him is preposterous, and he believes that the technology of his construction is beyond his grasp, but Megatron tells him that Ratchet is going to repair him. Ratchet says he's not going to cooperate, but he shows Ratchet that he has Miko and Raphael as leverage, and he orders his troops to look for Thunderwing's parts. We cut to Bumblebee and RC investigating Decepticon signals, and they come across Dreadwing shooting at the meteorite and flying off with a part of Thunderwing. This segues into another driving sequence, and Bumblebee and RC eventually take Dreadwing out of the sky. We now have to fight Dreadwing. Dreadwing will fire at you from far away, so you need to get in close and punch him. He'll eventually drop proximity mines that you also need to avoid. After you defeat Dreadwing, Soundwave grabs the piece and flies away with it.
Scrap!
We cut over to Megatron and Starscream, where they've found Thunderwing's power core link. Bulkhead comes in and sees that Starscream is with Megatron and gets too heated to the point he gives away their position. But before we move on with this scene, I need to criticize the writing here.
What are they doing?
Why are you asking that to Bulkhead when he just showed up? Bulkhead chases Starscream, demanding to know where Miko is, and Optimus figures there's no point in hiding anymore, and demands that Megatron give up the children, but he tells him no, and we have a fight with Megatron.
Optimus, leave Starscream to me. You should focus on Megatron.
Bulkhead, what do you think I'm doing? Megatron will charge to wail on you, which is when you need to use your shield, and wail on Megatron when he's in move recovery. He'll also fire his fusion cannon at you. Once he's down to half health, he'll activate Synergon mode. In this state, he moves faster and does more damage, and he can create shockwaves which you need to jump over. Optimus knocks Megatron out of the ruins, and he flies off with the power core link. Optimus contacts Bulkhead to tell him that he lost Megatron, and he asks what his situation is, and Bulkhead says that he's still in combat in the temple on the cliff. So Optimus fights his way to the temple, but he falls off the bridge, and he needs to be more careful getting to the temple. He meets up with Megatron, and he traps Optimus under some rocks. Back at the Nemesis, Megatron brings the power core link to Ratchet and says that he can finally make himself useful, which implies that Ratchet hasn't done anything to fix Thunderwing. Remember this for later. And Megatron gets contacted about Starscream returning, and Bulkhead is seen holding Starscream at gunpoint on the security cameras. Ratchet takes the opportunity to escape the cell and grabs Miko and Raphael so they can head to the elevator to the central computer room. On the elevator, Raphael asks Ratchet if he really repaired Thunderwing, and Ratchet jokes that he did so and brilliantly, and says that he found a serious design flaw when working on him. And they're going to need to get to the computer room to tell the Autobots about the design flaw he found. But the Decepticons aren't going to let them to the computer room that easily, so Ratchet tells the kids to hide while he fights off the cons. I should also mention that falling off a ledge into a pit takes away some health from your life bar and respawns you back on the ledge. The Cybertron games were more punishing than this. The Decepticons decide they need to destroy the elevator's power cells to stop it from moving, so you need to defend the power cells. They get to the computer room and they find that Soundwave was the one sending the cons their way. Ratchet tries to shoot him, but he puts up a force field, so Raphael is going to need to hack the system to drop the shields around the generator supplying energy to Soundwave's shield. The shields will drop one by one, which is when you need to punch the generator before Soundwave can put the shield back up. You also need to fight off Viacons while you wait for the shields to drop. Do this 4 times, and you can now fight Soundwave. Soundwave will teleport around the room, fire sonic waves at you, and charge to hit you. There was a couple times he teleported while firing a sonic wave, which hit me a few times. He also has short move recovery, while Ratchet takes a while to recover from getting knocked down.
You cheap bastard!
He also got stuck spinning after my final hit, which is kind of funny. After the beatdown, Soundwave retreats, and Ratchet and co. deactivate the signal jamming so they can contact the other Autobots aboard the ship. Bumblebee and RC come through the ground bridge onto the Nemesis. Okay, stop. This is not how the ground bridge works. The ground bridge can't generate moving portals. We don't know how the ground bridge works exactly, but it's been proven that it can't make moving portals. I also imagine that it needs a signal to work. RC tries to contact Bulkhead, but it's clear that Ratchet hasn't disabled the signal jamming yet because she can't reach him. I also imagine that nobody else was at the base to activate the ground bridge, and if Bumblebee and RC were at the base, I don't think they'd be willing to activate it to let Bulkhead bridge onto the Nemesis because what Bulkhead is doing is stupid and out of pure anger, and they wouldn't let him because they're more level-headed than him. And since RC is trying to get a hold of Bulkhead, it's clear that that's not what happened. So how are Bulkhead, Bumblebee, and RC able to get onto this ship? Whatever. RC says they should split up to look for the children and Ratchet, and RC runs into Arachnid. She tries to throw RC off the ship, but she rips out of the webbing, and she demands to know where Miko and Raphael are. And she taunts RC by suggesting that they may be dead, and we fight Arachnid. The fight is similar to the previous Arachnid fight, but now she shotguns you with projectiles when she perches. There's a point where you need to shoot the wing she perches on. She activates Synergon mode when she's down to a third of her health bar, and she'll spawn Insecticons to fight you. After Arachnid is defeated, RC gets attacked by Insecticons and Arachnid vanishes. We cut over to Bumblebee driving through the Nemesis, and he gets accosted by Knockout. He slams Bumblebee through the wall, somehow, and Bumblebee almost falls off the ship, and they fight. Once again, this fight is similar to the first time we fought him, but he needs to be down to 3/5 of his health to create the electrical hazards, and he'll try to hit you with a spin attack. He'll eventually need to recover after the attack, which is when you can go up to him and punch him. He'll then change the orientation of the hazards, and start the spin attack again. Once you get him down to a third of his health, he activates Synergon mode, and he'll attack more aggressively. After the fight, Knockout gets pissed off that we scratched his paint, and he tries to kill Bumblebee, but Bumblebee gets him to drive off the Nemesis. We cut over to Bulkhead and Starscream, and Starscream leads him into a trap, where, you guessed it, we have a fight with Starscream that's similar to the first time we fought him. The changes here are that you now have snipers to deal with, and Starscream will activate Synergon mode when you get him down to 1/5 of his health. After you defeat Starscream, he flies away, and he goes to install the power core link. Megatron chews him out for letting the Autobots in and losing Ratchet, but Starscream argues that they don't need Ratchet because they have the Power Core link. Thunderwing comes online and takes the Power Core link and installs it himself. Megatron wants him to be on his side, but Thunderwing reiterates that his one true master is Unicron, and says that he's nothing. Megatron brings up that they had a deal, and he says to consider his flame breath a show of his gratitude, and he crashes through the ceiling of the ship. This seems to cause the Nemesis to start shaking itself to pieces, so you now have a timer to get out of the storage area. This part had me confused about where I was supposed to go to get to the door, because some of the debris blocks your path to the door, and you now have to find another way to get out of this room. I had to retry this level because I was down to 30 seconds on the timer, so I just wanted to try again. We cut to the Autobots back at the base with Ratchet trying to look for Optimus. RC points out that it seems Thunderwing left the Nemesis, and Bumblebee says something that gives Ratchet the idea to lure Thunderwing somewhere to deal with him. Jack asks Ratchet if he's got a plan, and Ratchet says that Thunderwing is virtually made of dark energon, and that he intends to build a device that will weaken him. Ratchet plots Thunderwing's course, and Ratchet says that the Autobots need to delay Thunderwing until he gets the device built. The Autobots go to the location that Thunderwing should be at, and they get jumped by Megatron. As Megatron is about to kill RC, Optimus rams him out of the way and tells Bulkhead to take care of RC. Megatron is shocked to see that Optimus is alive, and he tells Megatron that he won't stop until Megatron is defeated. And they deliver one of the most iconic lines from the Transformers franchise before they fight.
One shall stand, and one shall fall.
Megatron will do the same things he did in the first fight, but he'll also use a new charge attack that you need to boost away from. When he's down to half health, he'll activate Synergon mode to deal more damage to you. I definitely recommend keeping your distance and shooting at him while circling him in vehicle mode. And of course his shockwave is back. I died a few times, which prompted the game to ask me if I wanted to retry with more health. This is something that the game will do if you die to a boss, which is a very Nintendo thing to do if you ask me. When you get Megatron down to 17% of his health, he'll power up again, and deal even more damage to you, and use the shockwave more often. After you defeat Megatron, Optimus offers Megatron a chance to surrender, but Thunderwing arrives and he uses his flame breath, which Optimus avoids. But the blast knocks everyone around, and Thunderwing declares that Optimus's destruction is at hand. Thunderwing will shoot a volley of shots from his left arm cannon, he'll try to crush you, he'll fire big projectiles from his right arm cannon, and he'll use flame breath. In order to damage him, you need to attack his arm cannons after he tries to crush you, or when he rests his arms on the ledge. But after you destroy his arm cannons, he says he's no longer weak and shackled, and powers up. Ratchet arrives with the device he said he would make, but unfortunately he only had time to create a device that generates a weak pulse, so it needs to be inside him when it goes off. And RC says it's impossible to do that, but Miko and Jack came along, and Miko shows RC that gap in Thunderwing's chest that they could use to get the device inside him. RC thinks that it won't do them any good, but Jack says he could get through there. But Optimus and RC tell him it's far too dangerous for him to do that, and tell him that this is their fight. But Jack says it's not, because if the Autobots lose, it could mean the end of the Earth. Optimus eventually agrees to let Jack do it, and RC brings Jack to Thunderwing via driving sequence. When Jack and RC get to Thunderwing, RC throws Jack into Thunderwing's chest, and Jack activates the device, which exposes Thunderwing's reactors in his shoulders. While this happens, Jack falls out of his chest, and RC catches him and drives away. Now Optimus can fire at his reactors. After Thunderwing's reactors are destroyed, he says that he'll destroy the Matrix even if he has to expend all his energy to do it. And Optimus uses the power of the Matrix to give himself a permanent power-up for the rest of this fight. This last phase has Thunderwing shotgunning you with projectiles and using attacks he used before. Thunderwing falls off the ledge, and since he has no more power, he can't fly anymore, and he falls into the lava. This causes the volcano to erupt, and Optimus drives out of there, and the Autobots watch the eruption from afar. We cut to the sunset, with Optimus saying that it's a privilege to have allies like Jack, Miko, and Raphael. Optimus sends a message to any Decepticons that whatever scheme they come up with, or whatever threat they make, will be in vain, because the Autobots and humans will stand united to protect the Earth. I may have complained about the writing in some spots, but I can't deny that this ending is really satisfying. I'm kinda curious about something though. Castle, how long is this game?
Transformers Prime the Game's campaign can be beaten in 2.5 hours.
Wow, this game is really short. While you play the game, you can grab artifacts that unlock character models you can look at, which also gives you information on the character you're looking at. The game also grades your performance based on how many shards you picked up from smashing boxes and defeating enemies, how long it took you to complete the level, and how much damage you took. Beating bosses in the campaign also unlocks them in multiplayer mode, with the exception of Thunderwing. But unlike the other Transformers games that had a multiplayer mode that I looked at, the multiplayer here is local and you can play against up to 3 AI opponents. And if you get a friend to play with, then they can either play with the Wiimote and Nunchuck or a Wii U Pro Controller. Unfortunately, you can only get one other person to play with you if you want to play with a friend. I don't get why they didn't allow you to play with 3 other people. You can play with 3 AI opponents, but you can't play with 3 flesh and blood people. You have 11 playable characters to pick from across both factions and 3 game modes. One problem is that the controls for the flyers aren't explained to you in a tutorial, but they are explained in a loading screen hint. Brawl is basically a stripped-down fighting game with very beginner-friendly controls. Combat isn't about memorizing several complex button combinations. It's about understanding the quirks and strategies of the character you pick. Every boss character still retains their attacks from when you fought them in the campaign, and every character can activate Synergon mode. My least favorite character to play as would probably be Starscream, and that's because his missiles don't fire straight. Are you trying to tell me something, game? There's also 5 maps to pick from, and this is really my only issue with the multiplayer. The maps feel uninspired and poorly designed, with things in the way, big pits to fall in, elevation that messes with the flow of combat, or just looking incredibly bland like the Grand Canyon. The volcano stage does have some environmental hazards that you need to avoid, which I feel should have been carried over to another stage somehow, unless you count the pits in the Energon mine. The maps also have Energon and Synergon crates that help you in battle, and if you manage to run out the clock, then you enter a showdown where you and your opponent have infinite Synergon, low health, and can't transform. So you need to get your head in the game with this one. Overall, I do think it's cool that there is technically a Transformers fighting game on console. Next up is Energon Match, and this mode has you defeating your opponent more than they defeat you for points. But if you get knocked out, then all the points you got goes over to whoever knocked you out, and whoever has the most points when the timer goes off wins. The last mode for multiplayer is Emblem Battle. This mode has you holding an emblem for as long as possible to continuously obtain points. If you get hit, you lose the emblem. If you hit the person with the emblem, then they lose the emblem. This mode is absolute chaos with 4 opponents fighting for the emblem. But pretty much any mode is chaos when there's 4 opponents, especially if they can move fast. You can change up the rules for multiplayer as well by changing the time limit or disabling items, and wins are recorded after every match you play. This game's multiplayer is something that I could definitely see being something that you and some friends get together and do at a sleepover, or just hanging out in general. The only real issue with it is the lack of 4-player support. Other than that, I believe this is a good piece of this whole package. And overall, this game is alright. Transformers Prime the Game is an easy beat-em-up with a short campaign and a fun multiplayer mode. I do wish it was a little more challenging, but you could definitely do a lot worse when it comes to brawlers. That's all for now. Thanks for watching, and gotta zoom.